Welcome to our Devos this week, where we are going to be talking about the miracles of Jesus. And we're going to highlight a couple of them, but really what we're going to be looking at is the meaning behind the miracles. You know, a miracle, as defined by C.S. Lewis, is a simple interruption of nature. And if you look at the ministry of Jesus, you'll find that he constantly interrupted nature by proving that he was God and by by displaying meaningful miracles in the midst of really difficult problems. So I want to jump right in, and we're going to do two at a time today. We're going to go through the ones that are in the Gospel of John. And today I want to talk about when Jesus changed water into wine and when Jesus provided bread and fish. So I'm going to give you the really quick shotgun version of the story, and then I'm going to explain the meaning. All right, so let's go with the water into wine. You know, this was his first public recorded miracle that we see in the Gospel of John. And we also see that it's a miracle that you might not equate it with him raising Lazarus from the dead, but it's really interesting. It says, when the master of the feast tasted, now you know the miracle, okay? I don't have to give you the miracle. Jesus is at a wedding. Mary's there, his mom. They run out of wine, which back in that culture was a really, really, really negative stigma. And it carried a lot of weight for the family. So Jesus turns water into wine. He has people gather together and they pour water into the carafes, and they end up transforming into wine. And the conclusion of the miracle, it says in John chapter 2, verse 9, when the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine, did not know where it came from. So they actually said that the taste of the new wine that Jesus offered was better than the wine that was given at the beginning of the wedding. So Jesus did this all by taking water in, transforming it into wine. So now, before we get to the meaning, I want to go to a similar one. We have Jesus ministering to thousands and thousands of people. Jesus is preaching probably 10 or 15,000 people, not just 5,000, but they're in a place where they are all together and hunger comes upon the group of people. Well, they didn't have Grubhub, they didn't have Uber Eats, so Jesus decides that he's going to spring into action and provide food for all of these people, between 7 and 15,000 people, most people believe. So this one is in John chapter 6, verse 6 and 9, and you know the story. It says, he said what they were going to do because he was testing them. He knew exactly what he was going to do. And he himself knew what he would do. And it says, there was a boy here. This is what one of the disciples said to him. There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many? So Jesus has the little boy give over his lunch, and he provides meals for the whole entire group, enough where they had doggy bags, okay, a little bit left over. Now, this is a miracle that's very similar to the wine miracle. And why are we talking about this? What's the meaning behind the miracle? And this is what I really hope that you can get from this miracle. It's this: God is in charge of provision. And God has more resources than we do. So here is the simple truth, okay? God can provide more and better than you have. The thing that I think most of us deal with, and we have trouble with on a regular day-to-day basis, is we constantly evaluate the quality of our life and what we can do based on what we have at the moment and what we're missing in that moment. Okay? And I talked about this a little bit in the last set of devotionals, where we tend to focus on deficiencies. So what we forget is God owns, according to the Psalms, the cattle on 1,000 hills. He has the resources of the whole entire universe at his disposal. And when we realize that we're his child, and when we realize that he loves us, then we can have faith that he's going to provide for us. And when we look at what we have, you say, okay, well, I don't have a whole lot. You might find yourself in a place where you're like, well, I don't have a lot of resources. I don't have a lot of time. Well, what time do you have? You're like, well, I'm not able to study the Bible regular. I only have a couple minutes in the morning. Well, what can you do with those couple minutes? I can't give regular because I can only give when I can, and we're having trouble making our bills. Well, what can you give? It's never the question of what you don't have, but you have to change this and say, what can God do with what I do have? If you don't have energy to do what you want to do, what do you have energy to do? And this is, business leaders call this an abundance mindset. That people have typically two types of mindsets. And you've seen these people work. There are people with scarcity mindsets, and there are people with abundance mindsets. And scarcity mindset, people are like, oh, we're never going to get this done. Oh, it's going to be so difficult. Oh, man, we're never going to make our goals for this quarter. And they're constantly talking about those things. We have to close the shop. We're not going to have enough revenue. But abundance mindset people say, well, we can work together and come up with a solution. It might not be ideal, but it's going to get better. And they constantly are thinking out of an overflow of abundance. Well, that, believe it or not, is exactly what this is. If you truly believe that you serve a God that is capable of interrupting nature, then you should also believe that that God can provide in ways that are more and better than you could ever possibly imagine.